I'm excited to introduce Gary Richardson from Vector Tech Group. Mr. Richardson is a Chief Information Officer with 33 years of technology experience who partners with CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and CIOs to enhance and grow their technology environment. After consulting in manufacturing space, Gary moved into financial services, where he spent his time innovating customer service and delivery technology for local as well as large multinational financial organizations. Working both domestically and overseas, Gary in recent years has been consulting with a variety of businesses and government agencies on the application of technology as well as cybersecurity best practices. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you and good morning. This is a first for me, being invited to the UP in the northernmost half in February. I'm from downstate, so we hear a lot of stories about you guys, and it was going to be sort of an experience. I was wondering what I was going to get. When I got to the airport in Detroit to fly up here, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the plane had been oversold and they were offering travel vouchers. What that tells me is you have a lot of people who are trying to get to this part of the country to take advantage of your natural resources and enjoy your beautiful community. I think that's marvelous, and I want to thank you for sharing it with me today. Let's move along here. Oops. Virtual currency and the innovation of money. I give this presentation over the last 2 years to a number of bank boards, and the reaction I get to it is, it varies. Some people thank me for the information, that's great. Other people, boards want to get further ahead in virtual technology, they want to stay ahead of it. And then there's the reaction that I get in many cases, which is I would qualify as trepidation. Because what I'm suggesting here today and what we're going to talk about is a technology that is going to be not just potentially disruptive to how we do business, but it's really going to challenge the status quo of how we do payments today. Up here we have the big three, Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. We've evolved to a place we understand. I'm willing to bet that each one of you out there in the audience today has 2, 3, 4 plastic cards in your possession. All of your businesses probably accept plastic. Everyone expects plastic to be accepted. In 1953, 54, Diners Club came out with the first credit card. No one accepted it. No one took it, but if you had one, you made it. You were there. You were on the map if you had a Diners Club card. Think about that now. Over the next 70 years, we have innovated this point of sale to the point where you see it today. You can walk in anywhere. You can present your plastic card. You can get a car wash. You can get groceries. You can get anything you need, not only in this country, but around the world. It's taken us a long time to get here. And you can imagine as you start to give presentations on technologies that are coming along, people have a lot of vested interest in how things work today. And when you're telling them it's going to change, trepidation comes along. Even with plastic and how long it's been along, we've still innovated it. So people now today, their lives surround their smartphones, and they want a way to turn plastic into software. And so on the screen, you see a number of different rails, a number of different methodologies that you can use that are still tied to credit cards, but you can still make payments. And people push for this. They want to be able to do everything on their phones. And that's great. Here are my credit cards. They're here on my wrist. I've got a plastic card in my wallet as well, but my credit cards are in here. And when you're an old guy like me, it was sort of interesting when I first got my iWatch. And I walked into McDonald's the first time and I said, I want an Egg McMuffin, and I stood there and she gave it to me and I held up my wrist and she had absolutely no idea what I was doing. None whatsoever. 18, 19 years old. It's like, I've got the advantage. This is cool. And so I told her, go ahead, hit the button. And so she hit the button. I swiped my watch. The next thing I know, she went and got her manager because the old guy was performing some sort of voodoo And all of a sudden, the cash register said that the sale was done. Today, it's old hack. And I walk in, I don't surprise anybody anymore with my watch and being able to do that, but I had my 10 minutes in the sun. That's innovation. That's what we're vested in today. And people are starting to push that envelope. So what you see here on the slide, company Forex did a survey of a number of countries, and what they wanted to judge is just how far along was cashless payments. And what they're trying to judge is how quickly we'll be in position to accept virtual currency, digital currency, and be able to make that leap. So you see the criteria they used on the left, number of credit and debit cards, number of contactless functionality, growth of payments over 5 years, cashless payments that are happening now, and education. And what you see on the right are how the countries ranked on their scale. I included this slide because of the first two countries at the top, Canada and Sweden. And those two are unique on this list because they're cashless. Their governments have decided that they are no longer going to print and have physical cash. They want out of that business. They don't want to manage it. They want to get rid of all the things that go along with trying to manage physical cash. And so Canada and Sweden are sort of leading the way. Now you'll see that the United States is sort of in the middle of the pack. And why? Well, first, we're a vast country, so is Canada. But we're a vast country, and we accept technology at varying degrees depending on what part of the country you're standing in. We also have a very large unbanked population in this country, people that just don't want to use banks. And so they want to use cash for their purchases. And we have laws that say that you have to be able to accept cash. There are businesses in this country that have tried to go cashless, and they don't want to accept cash, and they don't want to accept the hassle that goes along with accepting cash. Our politicians today sort of push back on that. We do have laws in place, and they defend the individuals that don't want to use cash, and they are forcing cash to still be a viable option in this country. Other countries do not feel this way, Canada and Sweden being one. You'll see some others as we go on in the presentation. But that's sort of why our scores are lagging behind some of the other countries. We'll get there. It's something that's sort of an acquired taste, but I think we'll get there over time. Along with that, the push continues. This slide is a little dated, but I leave it in here because it makes the point that I want to make, that the world itself is moving on to cashless. In 2016, Citibank Australia just decided to eliminate all cash in their branches. Why? They did a study and they found out that only 11% of the transactions that were going through their branches involved cash. They did the math. It didn't make sense for them to manage cash and all the things that happen around cash if their customers didn't want it. So they eliminated it. Belgium actually forbids you to do real estate transactions or transactions over 3,000 euro in cash. You have to use another payment method. Ecuador, we'll talk more about Ecuador in a minute, but they are the first country to go to a virtual currency. They digitized their currencies. That doesn't mean they eliminated other forms of currency, but Ecuador was the first out the gate with their own rails. India. India is another interesting study. I've been to India many times on business. And if you've been to India, they are a country of some huge cities with millions of people in them, surrounded by rural areas with tens of millions of people in them. In the rural areas, cash is king. Everything's a negotiation. You go there, you're going to have to negotiate. And they do everything with cash. Imagine what happens when you have a prime minister that comes out and says he wants to take that country to a cashless society because of their positioning themselves as the business processing, outsourcing capital of the world, along with software development and other things. They want to be able to facilitate those payments. So the Prime Minister of India started to eliminate certain cash denominations, and it caused civil unrest in India. They did not want to hear that because everything they do, everything they know is cash. Kenya is the largest penetration of mobile payments in the world. Why? Because Kenya has absolutely no infrastructure to support payments in any other way. They took a look at us, they took a look at the Western powers, and they said, we don't have the resources to build all this stuff, and so we're not going to. They made a very pointed decision that they were going to base their economy on mobile payments. They were going to deliver that to their citizens that way, and they really have no infrastructure to do it any other way. We've spent, like I said, with the cash, with the plastic, we've spent millions, billions of dollars building up all this infrastructure, and Kenya in one fell swoop said, we're not going to do it. We refuse to do it, and they're not going to. Singapore, I've only been through there once, very briefly, but it's interesting. In Singapore, they do have laws that say you can use cash, and you can use, businesses need to accept cash. However, if you look at the businesses you go through, there'll be signs in the window that say, no cash, please. They're very nice about it, but they really don't want you to walk in there with cash because they don't want to manage it either. There's costs and there's a lot of overhead involved with managing cash, and the other technologies are supplanting it. So they don't want to do it, and they put signs out, and the government sort of lets it go along. South Korea plans to be cashless by 2020. That's this year. They are not cashless yet, but their government has made that statement that they want to be there, and they want to adopt a virtual currency, and they are working on their own. And Sweden, you'll remember Sweden from the last slide. In 1661, Sweden was the first country to issue paper money. And now they're going to be one of the first countries to completely eliminate it. So it's come first circle. Sweden has led the way. Which brings us all to the next stop, virtual currency. So there are two types of virtual currency that we're going to talk about today, and it comes in many flavors. And I can get into the weeds on all of these different aspects of virtual currency. I don't want to do that in 45 minutes. It's just too much. But we're going to talk about two distinct types today. One is probably the one you've heard of the most, and it's called Bitcoin. And virtual currency and Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the most popular one. It's the biggest. And so we're going to talk about that, and I'll use Bitcoin and virtual currency interchangeably. The other thing that we're going to talk about is stable coins. Those are the things that are going to disrupt your business, and especially banking, but it's going to disrupt your business faster, and I'll explain why. Traditional virtual currency, what is it? Everyone talks about Bitcoin. What is it? The first point on this slide sums it all up for you. It is a software program. Nothing more than that. It is a software program that distributes the currency, makes it available, manages it, audits it, does everything itself internally. You don't need government agencies. You don't need anything else. Bitcoin is a distributed program that runs on millions of computers all over the world. You want to run Bitcoin, you can download the software, you can run Bitcoin. Not a problem. Why? Because it's designed to be autonomous. It's designed for everyone to participate. Governments do not control Bitcoin. And this is one of the reasons you have governments out there that really push back on digital currency, because as you know, governments have a large control over their currency and how it affects their economy. In a digital currency that's just running as a software program, they have virtually no control over it whatsoever. And that intimidates a lot of governments. Transactions are recorded on an internal ledger called a blockchain. And I'm going to explain the blockchain at a 50,000-foot level. If I try to go down too deep into blockchain, I'm going to see heads starting to hit the table. We don't want that. But I'll explain to you how a transaction goes through on a traditional currency. The currency is kept in a digital wallet, so you have to have some place to keep it. You've got digital currency. You can't put it in your pocket. You can't walk around with it because there's nothing physical. So you have a digital wallet that maintains it. And the amount of currency is typically finite. So what does that mean? In our country, depending on how we want to manipulate the currency, if we need to inject liquidity into the market, what do? We print money. If we don't want to inject liquidity, if we want to shorten the money supply, what do? We buy money. We take cash out of the supply. With a digital currency, governments can't do any of that. In Bitcoin today, there are about 18 million coins that have been distributed by the software program. There is a cap of 26 million that is programmed into the software. When it reaches that level, there will be no more. The only thing that you will have for Bitcoin is what's already been distributed, but there will never be an increase. Therefore, Bitcoin can never be manipulated by flooding the market with Bitcoin. And a lot of the other virtual currencies are the same way. They're a finite ecosystem. So we talked about a digital wallet. What is that? A digital wallet is something you're sitting out here right now on your phones and what have you. You can download one right now. I give you a place up here to go out and find one. You can download it to your phone, your tablet, your desktop, wherever you want to manage your digital currency. You can download a digital wallet. It's a piece of software that maintains your digital currency through the use of keys. The software program, like a Bitcoin, will create a digital key for every piece of currency that comes out of that program. Your digital wallet, you establish on your PC, and you will establish your own personal digital key that only you know. When you do a transaction in virtual digital currency, both keys have to come together for that transaction to happen. So when you want to do a transaction, you can see on the middle screen there, on the middle slide, you get into your digital wallet, you say, I want to send coins to so-and-so, you've got their information, you type it in, you click the button, you say send coins, and off it goes into Bitcoin. And we'll sort of explain that transaction in a moment. Both keys are required for the transaction, and the transactions can only be done between digital wallets. So I can't walk up to you or you and say, here's some Bitcoin. I don't have the opportunity to do that because it's all digital. So the transactions themselves have to be digital. So now we're going to understand the blockchain. I'm going to explain it at a 50,000 foot level. I said that Bitcoin and other virtual currencies are self-developed. They're self-contained. That means that everything that happens within that program. No other outside third-party entities have any influence over what happens within Bitcoin. What happens if you want to send coins from person A to person B, you get into your digital wallet, you key up the transaction, and you say go. That transaction will create what's called a block. That block is sent out on the internet, and as I said before, millions of computers all over the world are running Bitcoin. So what will happen is your transaction is submitted to all those computers that are running Bitcoin, and those computers start to solve algorithmic equations to determine whether or not that's a good transaction. Because you might be all sitting out there thinking, well, all you got to do is hack it, and I can get in and I can take all these coins. That's not the way virtual currency works. Each transaction builds on the transactions that have already taken place. If anyone tries to change any of the transactions that had taken place, all subsequent transactions would be null and void because they wouldn't be verified. That's why I say that on the blockchain, it is an indelible record of what actually occurred within that virtual currency. It cannot be changed. Your bot goes out, computers start solving algorithms, they come back and they start reporting back and say, yes, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good. You reach a tipping point. The transaction is accepted, it's added to the end of the blockchain, and your currency goes from digital wallet A to digital wallet B. Now, that may sound like it takes a week. It takes seconds, literally. And if you think about payment technology and the payment technology that you're all used to, there's no infrastructure. It's just the internet. So payment infrastructure, payment holds, all those things that go on with the payment infrastructure that we have today are gone because this program is self-contained and it does it all itself. How do you procure virtual currency? Again, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. You can go out to any one of a number of exchanges out there that deal in Bitcoin and give it its valuation. They have stores of Bitcoin. You can go there for a fee. You can buy virtual currency from them. And I give you a number of those up there. You can join a consortium and hope for the best. So When you send that block out to be verified, and computers are out there verifying it, it's called mining. And you may have heard that term when it comes to Bitcoin. I'm Bitcoin mining. When Bitcoin first came out, you could mine it on your own desktop computer and it wasn't that big a deal. But now that there's so much Bitcoin in the market, it's very complicated to solve the algorithms that verify that that transaction was indeed a good transaction. So it requires a lot of computing power that people don't necessarily are able to afford on their own. So consortiums get together, they solve these algorithms. If they solve the algorithm and they're awarded with the right answer and they participated, they can get a little Bitcoin back from the program. The program will award them just a little bit of Bitcoin. So if your consortium is successful, you'll get a little bit of Bitcoin. If not, you won't. It's not really a way to get rich. You can receive it from an individual. You can get it from a digital wallet like we talked about. Or you can go to one of these that you see up on the screen. I don't know if you've noticed them, but there are things called Bitcoin ATMs. Now, a Bitcoin ATM used to, I give a presentation on cybersecurity to businesses. And what would happen in cybersecurity is, you get ransomware, and ransomware encrypts all your files, and it pops up a screen and it says, if you want the encryption key to decrypt all your files and get your data back, you have to give me 3 Bitcoins. And so I would ask my audience, I said, everyone raise your hand if you know where to get a Bitcoin. It's 3 in the morning, you need your data back, where would you get a Bitcoin? And no one raised their hand. Now, in the last presentation I did, 2 people did raise their hand. This is one place that you can get a Bitcoin in a hurry, is a Bitcoin ATM. They used to be in sketchy neighborhoods, so you'd want to go with a driver, pack some heat, so you could get in and out. But they're starting to become more prevalent, and there's actually one not too far from my house. And you go with your digital wallet, and you put your money in, and you enter a transaction, and it'll send Bitcoin to your digital wallet. Or you can take your Bitcoin in, you can interact with the kiosk, and send your digital money into the ATM, and it'll spit out cash. They're primarily Bitcoin. I've heard there are other ATMs for some of the other ones, but they don't have near the scope that Bitcoin does. I've never seen one. But those are the ways that you can procure Bitcoin. So the next question I get asked in the digital currency world is, how big a thing is this? I mean, is it really something that I need to worry about? So I put together a slide on the market capitalization of digital currency. This is out of date. So about a month ago, I put this slide together, a little over a month ago, in preparation for this presentation. I can tell you now that the price of a Bitcoin is well over $8,000. And that's one of the risk rewards of digital currency in today's environment, is that the valuations fluctuate wildly. 2 years ago, Bitcoin was on life support. It really wasn't worth a whole lot. And today, valuations have skyrocketed. In this slide, concentrate on the first 3 entries. Bitcoin is the largest one. It's the one people have heard the most about. It's the one that most people use. Ethereum is a whole different program. It's a virtual currency. But when we start talking about stable coins, you have countries and businesses starting to build their own ecosystems for their virtual technology. Many of them are basing the technology on Ethereum. They use that technology. And then Ripple XRP. When we talk about stablecoins, we're going to talk a lot more about Ripple. You'll notice that there is a ton more supply of Ripple than anything else up there. And there's a reason for that. This is the one that's going to disrupt you the most in the quickest amount of time. And we'll talk about why. Value fluctuates often. This is the Bitcoin valuation fluctuation chart. As you can see, it was flatlining way out beyond there, and then it skyrocketed up to valuations today. As you can see there, it's just below 9,000 a coin, and it keeps going up and down. It keeps going. So there's a lot of speculation around Bitcoin, and you have to be very careful in your goals and what you want to get out of Bitcoin. I've given this presentation to groups like yours, and I've had people come up to me afterwards. They've bought a house, put their kids through college. They've done a lot of things with Bitcoin because they were able to time this and ride the wave. And there are other people, I have coworkers, they all got together and they started investing in digital currencies, and they're not doing so well. So you really have to be careful on how you invest. Who accepts virtual currency? Interestingly enough, if you go out and you Google and you say, who accepts Bitcoin? Frankly, you're just not going to get a ton of businesses that you recognize. Now, there are thousands upon thousands of businesses across the world that accept Bitcoin today, don't get me wrong. But they're more individual businesses, services, things like that. But when you look at the marquee businesses and you're looking for people that take Bitcoin, it's still a pretty exclusive category. Dallas Mavericks are owned by Mark Cuban. They're one that is more recent added to the list. He's a big internet guy, the Miami Dolphins. You recognize AT&T, Microsoft is up there, Whole Foods. So there are some names of companies that do accept Bitcoin today. But what you don't see up there are the General Motors, the Fords, the Chryslers, people selling large commodity. Why? Well, two reasons. One, they haven't had the big demand for it yet from their clients. So they haven't really built out the infrastructure to be able to handle it. More to the point, you give somebody 8 Bitcoins for a brand new truck today, and those 8 Bitcoins go from $8,000, $9,000 a piece to tomorrow they're worth $5,500. That's not so good if you're the person selling a truck. So you just don't see people jumping on the bandwagon just yet when it comes to virtual technology, and so you don't see the widespread adoption yet. It's coming, but it's just not there today. Advantages and risks. Some of the advantages is the central governments can't take it away from you. If you remember a few years ago, Greece was floundering in debt. There was threats of them kicking them out of the EU. They didn't know what they were going to do. They wanted to sustain themselves. And what did the government of Greece do? They looked out at their banking system and they saw all these deposits that were just sitting there doing nothing. And so the Greek government said, you are all patriots, you want to contribute, and they went out and they confiscated a good part of their citizens' bank deposits. I wonder what would happen in this country if the government just came along and said, hey, your savings account's gone, but you paid down the debt, thank you. I don't think that would go very well. But in Greece, they actually got away with it. When it comes to digital currency, the traditional digital currency, government has absolutely no control over it because they don't know you have it, which is another problem. Because everything's anonymous. At any point during this presentation, have I mentioned that when you sign up that you have to give your name, address, social security number, 12 forms of ID, a blood sample, and everything else that you have to give when you sign up for an account anywhere else today? No, I didn't do that, did I? Well, there's a reason for that, is it's all anonymous. You can sign up for this stuff and no one knows you have this currency. You're not paying taxes on it because the IRS doesn't know you have it. And that's a problem the IRS is looking to solve. Because as we know, the IRS loves to know what your money is, where it is, and how much you have, and how much you owe them. But today, that doesn't exist. There's no identity theft. Again, for the exact same reasons that I just told you, is none of your information is at risk. You do a transaction, nobody knows you did it. It's completely anonymous. Now, this is also one of the risks and one of the things that a lot of countries have a problem with. Virtual currency is the realm, the coin of the realm for the dark web, which is a whole different presentation I can give you that will curl your toes if you found out what went on in the dark web. But terrorist activity is paid for with virtual currency. Human trafficking is paid for with virtual currency. Gun running, all those things that happen on the dark web, Bitcoin is the currency of choice. And it's completely anonymous. Now, I will tell you, the FBI has gotten much better at tracking you down, but they can't track you to your digital wallet. They can track you through other means. They can track you in how you use the internet, and they are getting quite good at it. In my dark web presentation, I tell the story of a couple of guys that just thought they were playing and thought they were hiring a hitman. And they were gonna just kidding around. And the next thing you know, a bunch of black Chevy Tahoes with the dark windows pulled up in front of their house, and they had some splaining to do. FBI came and nabbed them, and they found them. Thank God they found them. And all they were doing is joking around, and their lives will never be the same. Virtual currency is anonymous. Quick settlements is another advantage. So again, if you're transferring payments around the world, your money's on hold. It's on hold in your, in your account. It takes 10 days to clear, blah, blah, blah. In a virtual environment, it takes seconds, and it's done. All of that infrastructure that's built around the payment rails is gone. And low or no fees. I mean, since you're not paying for all that infrastructure, there are a whole lot of fees associated with it as well. So you can see why companies want to start going down this path, is it takes out a lot of the inefficiency and a lot of the things that we've built 70 years creating. And since it's taking out those things that we've built 70 years creating, you start to understand the trepidation of people when they start looking at an invasive technology like this one. Some of the risks, there are no consumer protections on traditional virtual currency. If it's gone, it's gone. That's it. There's no FDIC, there's no nothing backing it up. If you mismanage it, it is gone. If you send it out fraudulently, it is gone. There is no protection. It's often volatile valuations, as I showed you before. Bitcoin goes up and down, and it can swing wildly by thousands of dollars overnight. It just depends on the whim of people around the world and how they feel about that virtual currency at that time. And technology can fail, and it can be hacked. So you've downloaded $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. It's on the hard drive on your PC, and your PC just died. Your hard drive blew up. You know where your virtual currency is? Gone. If you don't have it backed up, it's gone. And if you Google, you'll see that there are a lot of hacking attacks against virtual currencies. Well, Gary, he stood up there and he said it couldn't be hacked. The program can't be hacked, but the exchanges and you can be hacked. And so people put a keylogger on your PC, they find out what your password is to your digital wallet, and they will drain your account very quickly. Because again, as we said, digital currency is very efficient, and they will drain it quick. So it is very susceptible to technology failure. One of the exchanges, one of the largest ones, Mt. Gox, which is closed down now, lost keys to some of their exchanges, lost keys to some of their accounts. There is Bitcoin sitting in their old accounts, millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin that no one will ever be able to access again because the individual that had the keys died. A chuckle, but it's true. He died. And he took the keys to the grave with him that can never, ever be recovered. That's how volatile it can be. And then part of the risk, too, is you don't have a wide acceptance of Bitcoin and other virtual currencies yet. When you think about it, we talked about Diners Club cards. Diner Club cards, there wasn't a large amount of acceptance of a Diners Club card. The infrastructure wasn't there. People didn't know how to use it. So it languished for a long time until it innovated. Same thing here. It's just not wide acceptance yet. And I will tell you right now, regulation is in the air, and this is more for bank boards than you guys. Arizona Senator, at the end of 2019, introduced what they called the Cryptocurrency Act of 2020. So the federal government has been asked by the banking system to get involved in this because the banking system knows they need to get in front of this stuff. They know their clients are going to want to use it, and frankly, the banks don't know how to deal with it today. And when you start thinking about all the regulation that the banks are under with anti-money laundering and secrecy and all the things that go along with banking, all of a sudden they've got clients that want to start using digital currency, and they don't know how to handle it today. At the Davos Business Forum about a month ago, a little less, there was a large statement that came out of Davos that said that they wanted world governments to come along and start defining how virtual currency can be used along with all the other different types of currency that are available to us today. The EU is also taking this seriously. They've got their anti-money laundering directive, January 2020. That's their start in starting to regulate how virtual currency is used as well. And so I would say over the next 2 years, you're going to see a tremendous amount of volatility just in the virtual currency markets as governments start to wrap their hands around the fact that people are going to use this whether they like it or not. And so they may as well get their hands around how they're going to use it and how they're going to make it available. Self-regulation is also happening because people are freaked out about this. Bank of America, if you try to buy virtual currency with a Bank of America credit card, your transaction will be canceled. Because Bank of America has no idea what you're buying. They don't know who you're buying it from. They don't know where the money's going to. They don't know anything other than all of a sudden they've got a transaction on one of their credit cards that for all they know could go towards human trafficking. And they have a litany of regulatory bodies that are looking for just that kind of thing in their records. And if the bank can't tell them that they looked at this record and they know where that money went, that's a real problem for them. So Bank of America and a lot of other banks are doing the same thing. They're just canceling the transactions. They're not allowing them to happen because they don't know what to do. I don't blame them. It opens them up to all sorts of scrutiny, and it's a big risk for them. And I've had banks ask me what we should do, and I say, be cautious. People are going to use this technology, and they're going to use Bitcoin as a payment method, but you don't necessarily have to be ensnared with it. And so I've warned a lot of banks to be very cautious. Facebook will not advertise virtual currency. Well, I find this a little hypocritical since Facebook is coming out with their own virtual currency, Libra. But we're not going to advertise it. We don't want anything to do with it. But they're coming out with their own. What Facebook's position is on this is they don't want to advertise it. You see it, you take advantage of it, you start using virtual currency, and then something go wrong. And you're caught up in a human trafficking scam or terrorists or what have you, and all of a sudden the government comes along and says, hey, Facebook facilitated this, they advertised it, you're involved. So Facebook is one. There are others out there that they just won't accept advertising for virtual currency right now, again, because they don't know what to do. And I can't say as I blame them. Many banks are not accepting virtual currency deposits. Again, Bank of America won't even let you do a transaction, but there are a number of banks that won't even let you deposit virtual currency into their deposit base or convert it to them. Although there are a couple of banks out there that do advertise that they will take virtual currency deposits. They're doing this as a differentiator. They want to build a market share, and they feel that they can deal with the regulatory fallout. Good luck to them. Because I don't want the government coming along to help me with my business. So I wish them well, but it's sort of a Wild West show right now. So now we're going to talk about the other type of virtual currency. We talked about traditional virtual currency, the Bitcoins, and sort of how that works. There's a type of virtual currency that is affecting you right now. You may not be participating in it, but many are, and they are called stable coins. What a stable coin is a coin that is tied to a traditional currency like the dollar. You put $1 in, you get a coin back that's worth $1. Well, how is this disruptive? Virtual currency are being created primarily like this to facilitate international payments. JP Morgan has their own JP Morgan coin that they've created and they facilitate. Why do they do that? Because what JP Morgan can do with their product is they can facilitate a commercial payment anywhere in the world, anytime, 24 hours a day, and they don't go through any of the traditional infrastructure that is created for payment processing today. They eliminated all of it. So all those payments, I worked for a very large bank earlier in my career, and we used to facilitate the payments on super tankers. And so no bank ever buys one whole super tanker, and I don't want to go through the whole thing, but you got $1 billion super tanker, and we may be owning $350 million of that. And so we would facilitate our $350 million, and the other banks would buy their pieces. and it would take a month to buy a super tanker or more. And you didn't want to miss any payments, and you didn't want to miss anything because the super tanker would sit on the lot, and that was bad, and I got called all sorts of really terrible names. So you made sure that you stayed in front of buying that super tanker. Imagine a world where you can buy a super tanker in as little as a minute. As long as the money is there and you're facilitating this, that super tanker can go like that, because the money will settle instantly through virtual currency. No third-party payment systems are required for it. And no regulatory, no auditing, no nothing. Because, again, that all-inclusive program controls the whole thing. So a lot of that's gone. Signature Bank is doing the same thing up here. They're facilitating payments around the world 24/7, low or no fees. And with that, the one that's disrupting all of you, and it will disrupt all of you, is called riding the ripple. So you'll remember earlier we talked about Ripple XRP, which is the virtual currency coin that was number 3 on the list out there. What many of the larger banks around the world are doing right now is they are using Ripple as a credit intermediary to transfer funds anywhere in the world. Now you can see why JP Morgan created their own coin, because they don't want their lunch eaten by Ripple. They want you to use their coin and stay within their ecosystem so that they can help you make those payments. You don't have to. Businesses today can sign up for Ripple, sign up for the Ripple Gateway. It becomes the credit intermediary, and you can transfer payments around the world in any denomination and any currency type you want. So you're sitting here and you're paying in dollars, and somebody wants to be paid in French francs, no problem. You get on the Ripple Gateway, you put in your dollars are created to Ripple XRP, which is the coin. That coin is transferred over the internet in a matter of seconds. It's reconverted to French francs, poof, payment made. Anyone can do this. And banks are working very hard to get in front of it. Some banks are using Ripple as their technology platform to transfer these payments. Payments can be confirmed within seconds, and businesses can take advantage of this just like banks can. So you can transfer payments around the world just like they do. And that brings us to virtual currencies in other countries around the world. So as you might imagine, not all countries are made equally, and they accept virtual currency differently. So Russia. Vladimir Putin came out a couple of years ago, and he said that they had no interest in building banks along the avenue of the large Western powers. They just don't have the impetus, they don't have the talent, they can't do that. What they do have are some really smart software programmers, and based on Ethereum, it is their intention to compete with Western banking powers using virtual digital currency. And he has reiterated that over and over and over. Russia intends to compete this way and put pressure on the West by creating their own virtual currencies. And they're being quite successful in their early stages. India. So India, as we've talked about, is a country that depends on business process outsourcing, software development, and those types of things for their survival. They have over 1 billion people in India, and that's a lot of mouths to feed. Excuse me. And so they have a very vested interest in making that as efficient as humanly possible. So what they're doing is they're jumping on board with virtual currencies as a way to accept payments more effectively from their customers. They're developing standards internally. I believe from listening to their prime minister that they want to develop their own virtual currencies. They don't want to depend on others. And they face a lot of challenges internally from the internet penetration. Again, I've been to India. Outside the major cities in the rural areas, they have absolutely no access to technology whatsoever. So they have a very large hill to climb, and every time they start talking about centralizing on these types of advanced technologies, political unrest breaks out because the people in the rural areas feel they're being left out. So they have a lot of hills to climb when it comes to India. And then there's our shining light, Ecuador. Ecuador shut down all other virtual currencies in 2015 and launched, I'm going to butcher this, Sistema de Dinero Electronacio. They have their own virtual currency. Hey, it's not bad. It sounded good anyway. You have to be approved to use their rails, to use their virtual currency. It's pegged to the dollar. But they are the first country to do this. To my knowledge, they still accept other currencies, but their government is determined that they are going to move in this direction and exit other payment rails. Ecuador wants to be the first country that is fully digital. Yeah. And then there's one final country, my favorite, because it's the easiest to talk about. China says no. Big middle finger for you, no virtual technology, nothing, that's it. China shut down all of their Bitcoin and all of their exchanges in 2017. It is illegal to use virtual technology, virtual currency of any kind. If you are found doing that, you will be invited to prison where you may or may not get out. So you might think that they're doing this for holistic purposes. What China says is this is suborning human trafficking, it is suborning terrorism, they can't track it, and therefore they're just not going to allow it, and the innovation isn't worth anything. When you think it through, you also have China who manipulates the yuan and manipulates their currencies because they have the most mouths to feed of any country on the planet. And they cannot afford to allow their currency to not be controlled by the government because the government is the one setting the rules on what you can and can't do. But for right now, if you're in China and you try to do any sort of a virtual currency transaction, that is a great big no. So how do you prepare for this? I get that asked a lot of bank boards. How do I prepare to do this? Well, if you're going to go to bed at night losing sleep over traditional virtual technology, my recommendation to you is don't do that. It's not there yet from a wide-ranging acceptance perspective. When you can go get groceries and use Bitcoin to pay for them, you will know it's time. But right now, we have not iterated fully enough to where it's making a huge impact in our economy from a traditional standpoint. Stable coins are another matter. Stable coins are out there now. Banks and other companies are using them. And if you're not using them or if you at least haven't looked at it, you will be put at a disadvantage. What I will also tell you is from this technology's perspective, I think this is the second most disruptive technology that you're looking at other than things that happen within your own ecosystems and your services and things that you provide. I think this is the second most disruptive technology you will come across because this is how people buy your goods and services. The first being artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will be one of the biggest disruptors in our lives over the next many decades to come as computers start to take over traditional things that humans used to have to do. And there are many, many examples of artificial intelligence taking over in the customer service areas today. When you call many of the major big banks, you get online and do chat with them, you are talking to an artificial intelligence robot. You are not chatting with a human being. You may not know that, and if you Google, you'll find that the banks are naming them cutesy names. But if you are doing chats with a lot of the largest banks in the world, you are doing chats with robots, and you can't tell the difference. So those two technologies are going to be very disruptive. I would begin reading about blockchain projects that are underway. I tell this to banks because when you think about blockchain, it's not only money that it can facilitate. Banks in particular are using blockchain technology to also facilitate some of the other things that they're doing to get rid of some of that old infrastructure that's costing them millions of dollars to maintain. Think about mortgages. A mortgage can't be altered once it's recorded, but if you pull it on an indelible blockchain as opposed to this big infrastructure that they use to maintain mortgages today, they can cut out tremendous amounts of cost. Another thing is contracts. If you've got contracts that are on a blockchain, again, it's an indelible mark, and it can be done outside of all of the large traditional applications that are being used to track all of that today. So I would encourage everyone just to do a little Googling so you understand a little bit more about how blockchain is being applied. Start discussions with core providers. So in the banking world, what I tell them is if you start talking to your core technology providers and they can't give you any sort of a feedback on what they're doing with virtual technologies and blockchains, it's time to start pushing them, or it's time to start looking for other core providers. They can't ignore this because they will put you at a disadvantage. For some of you in the manufacturing space, it may be the same thing. It's time to start talking to your core providers of your technology about how you take payments and about how you process this stuff. And at least be aware of some of the trends that are coming down the road at you. Risk management should be aware of it. Again, that's something more towards banks. And regulation is picking up with major potential changes. So if you're thinking about dipping your toe into the water of virtual currency, I would also, especially if you are a regulated industry, I would highly recommend that you start talking to your regulators about how they're going to view this type of technology and what changes you can expect. Now with that, I come to the end of my presentation. If there are any quick questions, I will be happy to answer them. And
we have
right
time
here
just for
front.
one quick question before we break for lunch, so.
Thank you. There are a lot of apps like Robinhood and the Square Cash app now that are giving you the option to buy Bitcoin, but can you explain what the difference is between buying Bitcoin through one of those apps versus a place like Coinbase?
They have a cash reserve of Bitcoin and they can sell it just like anyone else. So there really is no difference.
Maybe one other quick one if there is.
One in the back.
Let's go over here.
I had a question on Bitcoin. Specifically, you mentioned the blockchain technology and it's all these computers networked together. What's going to happen when that number hits 26 million and there's no incentive for these computers to stay networked together?
At that point, if it's not distributing more coins, then Bitcoin will just run all on its own. You know, there won't be mining anymore. There's really no incentive for people to run it. It'll just run on a distributed network for the computers that are left.
And one last
One
one.
more.
When you take Ripple or the stable coin, how does that compare to what we know in Western Union and PayPal? Those type of technologies.
Well, PayPal, like my PayPal account is tied to my credit card. And so my credit card is tied to the infrastructure around credit card payments. When you talk about Ripple, all that infrastructure is gone. It is all contained within that program. SWIFT and all the other infrastructure that is built around how payments and how money moves and how it's regulated, it's all gone. It's just an internet transaction between digital wallet A and digital wallet B. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the time you've given me here today. You've been a tremendous audience. Thank you very much. And have a great rest of your conference.